It's nice to be working with Bill and everybody again, and it looks like a good film. Remember, when the weapon a movie deployed against an ancient supernatural evil was a 1967 Soul record, the collective goodwill of 8 million people, a Bobby Brown cameo, and the Statue of Liberty, and none of it felt wrong for a second? That was Ghostbusters II. In 1989, Ivan Reitman gave New York a river of psychic misery beneath its streets, a Carpathian warlord who'd been hiding in a painting for 5 centuries, and 4 men the city had declared finished, and then needed again anyway. Bill Murray was Venkman, treating New York's fate like someone else's inconvenience. Dan Aykroyd was Ray, still a believer. Harold Ramis was Egon, still measuring things nobody asked him to measure. Sigourney Weaver returned as Dana. Ernie Hudson was Winston, the normal one. Peter MacNicol arrived as Yanis, a museum curator who bet on the wrong side of an ancient evil. Today, 15 weird facts about Ghostbusters 2. Stick around for number 1, because the happiest song in the film has one of the saddest stories in music. Number 15. The studio announced Ghostbusters 2 before anyone agreed to make it. Chairman David Puttnam arrived at Columbia Pictures in 1986 preferring small, serious films and no interest in the franchise blockbuster his predecessor had built. Ghostbusters wasn't his. He hadn't developed it, ordered it, or wanted it, so his solution was to announce a sequel anyway. In April 1987, Puttnam announced Ghostbusters 2 would film that year. Nobody had told director Ivan Reitman. The movie still depended on Reitman, Murray, Aykroyd, and Ramis, all of whom held enough leverage that nothing happened without their agreement. Puttnam didn't help himself by publicly calling Murray an actor who took Hollywood money without giving back to his art, and Murray's agent, Mike Ovitz, arguably the most powerful in the industry, also represented Aykroyd, Ramis, and Reitman. One announcement and one insult managed to alienate everyone with authority over the franchise. November 1987 passed with not a single frame shot. By September, Puttnam was out at Columbia, the Murray situation a contributing factor. A year later, filming actually began, Reitman directing, Murray on board, and the chairman who'd announced it long gone. For a while, Ghostbusters 2 existed only in a press release. Number 14. A city that supposedly didn't care sent 2,000 people before sunrise. The production called for 300 extras for a night shoot at Washington Square, where panicked New Yorkers flee a giant ghost tearing through the arch. First take, 750 showed up. Second take, 1,200. By the third, word had spread that Ghostbusters was filming, and somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 people packed the square at 5 a.m. The crew stopped counting and started bracing. A VistaVision camera sat dead center as crowds poured in from 3 streets. On cue, they screamed and ran, some straight at the camera, climbing over cabs, while crew jumped clear of the lens. The effects supervisor compared it to King Kong loose in Manhattan. The movie's premise is that New York gave up on the Ghostbusters, yet the crew asked for 300 bodies and got thousands before sunrise. Number 13. Columbia traded its soundtrack for one Bobby Brown song. Brown appears on screen for about 30 seconds, but getting him there cost far more than a cameo. By 1989, he was one of pop's biggest stars, and producer Peter Afterman wanted him to record the theme, as Ray Parker Jr. had for the original. Instead of a check, Afterman handed Brown's label, MCA, the rights to the entire soundtrack album, just to land one song. Brown agreed on one condition: a role in the film. By the time he arrived, filming had nearly wrapped, so Reitman wrote him a quick cameo as the mayor's aide. 30 seconds, no arc. The song, On Our Own, hit number 2 on the Hot 100, held there 3 weeks, and topped the R&B chart, outlasting most of the film's critical reputation. MCA got the album, Brown got the credit, and Columbia gave away its own product for a performance that became more famous than anything they negotiated to keep. Number 12. The $215 million hit that never got a Ghostbusters 3. Murray came out of the sequel demoralized and made clear he wasn't returning for a third film. Under the original deal, Murray, Aykroyd, Ramis, and Reitman each held veto power, and Murray's no held firm. Scripts kept arriving and getting rejected, Legend has it Murray once shredded a draft and mailed the confetti back with a note about nobody paying to watch old men chase ghosts. Aykroyd denies it ever happened. It's too good a story to die and too mean to fully believe. Then in 2014, Ramis died, the co-writer of both films and the man who gave us Egon, without ever making another Ghostbusters movie. Hollywood kept the name alive through reboots and revivals, but the original four were done. Ghostbusters Afterlife arrived in 2021, directed by Jason Reitman, Ivan's son, with the survivors reduced to cameos. 32 years later, that was still the ending, for vetoes and a yes that never came together again. Number 11. Vigo's full name is an inside joke. Von Hamburg comes from Wilhelm von Homburg, the actor who physically played Vigo. The surname Deutschendorf matches the family name of the twins who played baby Oscar, the child Vigo spends the movie trying to possess, and those twins were nephews of folk singer John Denver, born Henry John Deutschendorf Jr., a man whose wholesome image sits about as far from Moldovan dread as culture allows. So the villain's full name mashes together the actor who played him and the family name of the baby he's after. Impossible to unhear once you know it. Number 10. The one thing everyone agreed worked wasn't in the script. Peter MacNicol's Yiannis Poha started life as Jason, a bland museum curator serving Vigo, by MacNicol's own account, a nothing role any of 12,000 actors could have played as written. So he didn't play it as written. Before auditioning, he decided Yiannis should hail from the same homeland as the obsessed-over painting, making him Carpathian, then built an accent stitched from a Czech friend, an agent overheard at a Romanian travel agency, and Meryl Streep's voice in Sophie's Choice, which MacNicol had co-starred in. He walked into the audition already in character, and Reitman bought the invented person on the spot. Everything made it except the black beetle wig MacNicol wanted, vetoed since half the cast already had dark hair. Critics singled out the accent and off-kilter menace as the film's one real highlight, and none of it was written, requested, or in any draft. Number 9. Recast in post, notified by the movie theater. Wilhelm von Homburg played the whole role on set, lines and all, but post-production decided his delivery was too slurred to carry an ancient warlord, so every word was quietly redubbed by Max von Sydow. Nobody told von Homburg. He found out sitting in the audience at the screening, watching his own face open its mouth while a stranger's voice came out. He walked out, and it didn't help his career. He drifted into smaller roles and died of cancer in 2004. The film's executive producer later called him crude and bigoted to a reporter, and by most accounts that wasn't unfair. He was a difficult guy, but getting silently replaced is still a brutal way to find out. The face is his, the menace is his, but every word belongs to someone else. Number 8. Ghostbusters II faked its most famous painting. The centuries-old oil portrait at the film's center isn't a painting at all. It's a photo of von Homburg doctored to look like an old European masterpiece. Reitman rejected the early fantasy-style designs as too Conan, wanting Vigo to look like he'd stepped out of a Real museum. So the team brought in Glenn Etchison, whose specialty was making real people look like paintings. A real oil portrait was commissioned first and approved, but blown up on a movie screen it could never match von Homburg's actual face. So they scrapped it, built a flat reading set, posed von Homburg in full costume and prosthetics with every shadow killed by lighting, photographed the result, and aged the photo to look like a discarded painting. The real oil now hangs in Ivan Reitman's house. The fake one, a photo pretending to be a painting, is the one that terrified millions. Number 7. Jason Reitman turned his own deleted scene into Ghostbusters canon. Long before directing Ghostbusters Afterlife, Jason Reitman couldn't get through a Ghostbusters scene at all. In 1984, his father cast Jason and his sister Catherine as terrified New Yorkers fleeing 550 Central Park West. They got one take. Both kids got too scared to continue. Jason refused to redo it, and Ivan scrapped the scene, archiving the footage. 37 years later, while directing his own Ghostbusters film, Jason rediscovered that footage and worked it into Afterlife, officially making his failed childhood cameo canon. It's not his only childhood appearance. In Ghostbusters II, he plays a bratty kid at a birthday party where Broke Ray and Winston work as entertainers. telling Ray that his dad says the Ghostbusters are full of crap. Jason spent his childhood either fleeing Ghostbusters or declaring them finished, then grew up to inherit the franchise and quietly canonize his own failure. Number 6. Harold Ramis got even with his dad's robbers. The cackling courtroom ghosts, Tony and Nunzio, the Scoleri brothers, are executed criminals sent to the chair by the judge they now haunt. The names weren't invented. Ramis said the brothers were loosely based on a real pair who once robbed and roughed up his father's store, so he wrote them into the sequel and handed them a courtroom and a proton stream. The design carried its own in joke. Effects artist Tim Lawrence built them as a tall, skinny one and a short, fat one modeled on the Blues Brothers, Aykroyd's own act, one stretched into a bean pole, the other packed with goo-filled spandex to wobble like pudding. Ramis turned his father's worst afternoon into a special effect, and nobody in the theater ever caught it. Number 5. Winston almost got written out twice. Ernie Hudson has appeared in all 5 live-action Ghostbusters films, but it nearly didn't happen either time. In the original, Winston had a much bigger part with a full military backstory before most of it was cut before cameras rolled. He didn't appear until the film was half over and never made the poster, something Hudson said took him a decade to make peace with. For the sequel, the studio moved to shrink Winston again, possibly out of the picture entirely, until Bill Murray stopped it, saying simply that if Hudson wasn't in it, he wasn't doing it either. A Ghostbusters 2 without Murray wasn't really Ghostbusters 2, and everyone knew it. Winston stayed, Murray never made a thing of it, and Hudson has spoken about it with gratitude ever since, calling it the kind of thing that almost never happens in the business. Number 4. The ending audiences remember almost didn't happen either. 8 weeks before release, the film's last 25 minutes didn't exist in their final form. Test audiences liked the movie but couldn't follow the climax or how Vigo, the River of Slime, and the Ghostbusters' victory fit together, and the villain's defeat felt too easy. So Reitman threw out the ending and filmed an entirely new final act in 4 days, with the production racing through March and April 1989 to write, edit, score, and finish effects before the June 16th release. The Statue of Liberty marching through Manhattan on the city's collective goodwill, the film's most ambitious sequence, was part of an ending that didn't exist while marketing was already running. The finale audiences saw had been written, shot, edited, and scored in about 8 weeks. Most films spend longer than that on audio mixing alone. Number 3. Who you gonna call in Scotland? It's hard to imagine a Ghostbusters movie without New York, but Dan Aykroyd's first sequel draft, written in 1986, barely resembles the finished film. No Mood Slime, no Vigo, no Statue of Liberty. Instead, Dana Barrett gets pulled into an underground world beneath Scotland through a fairy ring, and the team follows her down to fight a banshee, traveling via a 2,000-mile pneumatic tube Aykroyd described as a kind of primitive mail chute. Aykroyd later admitted it was too strange and inaccessible to work. He'd wanted to flip the first film's rooftop finale by sending the team underground instead. Harold Ramis helped wrangle the story back to New York, and the Scotland elements, fairy ring, banshee, 3-day tube ride, all vanished. But the bones of Aykroyd's idea survived. The finished film's River of Slime runs through New York's own abandoned pneumatic transit tunnels. His 2,000-mile tube shrunk and relocated under the city. Number 2. The Ghostbusters outnegotiated their own studio. Ghostbusters 2 opened to $29.5 million, the biggest non-holiday opening weekend and the all-time single-day record at the time, eventually grossing over $215 million worldwide. Murray, Aykroyd, Ramis, and Reitman knew Columbia couldn't make the sequel without them, so instead of demanding big upfront salaries, they took minimal pay in exchange for roughly 10% of the profits each, a cut Reitman admitted was large. That kept the budget near $30 million instead of the $50 million full salaries would have required, and meant every ticket sold paid them directly. They weren't betting on a paycheck. They were betting on the movie, and it paid off. The smartest move the Ghostbusters made in 1989 wasn't on screen. It was in the contract. Number 1. The happiest song in Ghostbusters has the saddest story. Your Love Keeps Lifting Me Higher and Higher is a 1967 Jackie Wilson record and maybe the most purely joyful 3 minutes in American music. Aykroyd picked it for the climax because they needed a song that made the whole crowd feel something good together, and Wilson delivers it like joy is renewable. What the movie leaves out. In 1975, mid-song, Wilson collapsed on stage from a heart attack and hit his head, never really recovering, spending his last 8 years barely conscious before dying in 1984, 5 years before this film used his voice to save New York. Elvis Presley, who idolized him, helped cover his medical bills before his own death in 1977. The song the Ghostbusters used to prove joy can push back the darkness came from a man who lost nearly everything that made it, and decades later, it's still doing exactly what it was built to do. The body gave out, but the voice never did. And there you have it, 15 weird facts about Ghostbusters 2. Which one hit hardest? Drop it in the comments. And don't worry, we're not going to release a river of psychic misery under your city just to make a point about subscribing.
Although, we just might.
Until next time, back off, man, we're scientists.